Hello and welcome to the CRM Zen Show, where we talk about all things Zoho. This is episode 285, recorded on Friday, January 12th, 2024. WordPressive, most WordPressive. From Zenatta Consulting, I'm Tyler Colt.
And I'm Greg Belnap. Let's get right on into the show.
Let's do it. So as always, I'll make my joke here. Astute viewers will notice that Brett is out of town this week. So we have subbed in Greg Belnap, our director of Zoho development. We always like to have one person on the hinge and one person completely unhinged on the show. So Greg will be filling the role of the unhinged party. You can just see it in his eyes. He is ready to bring that weird Greg energy.
I don't know what's going to happen today. I'm a
no
wild
one
card.
No one does at all. Thanks for joining, Greg. And with that, let's get right on into announcements and events. Alrighty, so looking at our upcoming events here on Club Z. Club Z, if you don't know, is our community forum at club.zenatta.com. Post all of our events there, post free code shares, answer people's questions. Feel free to jump on over there and join. In terms of upcoming events, next week, January 16th, that should be a Tuesday. Yep, it's Tuesday. We'll be doing our full product overview for Marketing Automation 2.0. This has been long in early access and then beta and then back to alpha and then to beta and now slowly being rolled out to various Zoho users. So we thought it'd be a good time to just jump in, kind of go through everything within that product. I will say, I know Wayne's been doing some testing. It's kind of a mixed review so far, but we did want to highlight just kind of what's different, what is in there, because there are some features that are really nice. I won't spoil it, but some of the way you're tracking, like the flow through journeys, is definitely better and should have some upside. From there, we'll be doing our Azaz CRM Zen Show as we always do. And then headed into February, on February 20th, we'll be doing our Zoho Recruit full product overview. Outside of the Zenatta events, we do also catalog all these Zoho events here on Club Z. So it looks like they're going to be doing their events for Zoho People, Zoho Social, couple Zoholics in Sri Lanka and Dubai. And then throughout the course of February, they're going to keep going on this tear of Zoho Social and Zoho Mail trainings. Other events-wise, I don't think we have any. If anyone's listening, if you're doing a Zoho event, please feel free to send it over. We'd love to publicize it for you. As we don't make this just exclusively for our events. We want them all. So without any further ado, let us jump right on into the news. Alrighty, so first story here comes from the world of Zoho Creator. Looks like this is a forward-looking article here. So this is not everything that's been released. These are things that are going to be released here on the roadmap for 2024. Any of these kind of stand out for you, Greg, as you had a chance to look through here?
Oh yeah, there's some really cool stuff in here. About halfway down, you've got AI assistance for Deluge, which this is something that I've been trying to work on a little bit on the back end of, maybe trying to create like a fine-tuned model of like ChatGPT or something for writing Deluge scripts. But obviously I would love it if just Zoho was able to provide their own finely tuned model, because they obviously have
more data,
all of the data of how Deluge scripts look and are structured. So I think that one is really cool. I also really like the async function.
I knew you were going to call that one out. I knew it. I was going to beat you to the punch, steal it from you, but I knew you were going to mention async function. So explain that a little bit. Like, why would one want to use an async function?
Yeah. So the thing that's really cool about async functions is that it allows you to kind of run stuff in parallel. So anybody who's a Deluge developer knows that any one particular Deluge script that you are writing, let's say that everything is self-contained in that script. You're not even like calling any other standalone functions or anything like that. It's just yours. You have a total of 5 minutes to run that one function before it would automatically just shut down and say, I'm not running this function anymore.
sick of it. I'm done.
I'm done. I can't. I just can't. Which is fine for almost everything that you would need a function for. Where it gets difficult is when you are having to do, say, like a large scale migration, or a regularly scheduled pull of like just a large data set, or if you're working with another something like Zoho Books, for example, you can only make 30 API calls per minute. But let's say that you have a function that needs to work on a list of 100 things, then obviously, okay, I can't do everything in that one run of a function. So
you need to make like
asynchronous
an assembly
functions,
line. Yeah, you need to make a queue kind of what needs to happen.
Exactly. So asynchronous functions allows you to kind of not be beholden to that. So that's going to be particularly useful for those large data sets that you have to work with. Right now, we do use workarounds, like using Zoho Flow. You can kind of create like sort of piggybacking loops, which works, but then it's also another like credit system that you are now throttled
monitoring.
By. So having all of that asynchronicity in Creator is going to be huge.
Yeah. And I guess the nice thing is it might not be supported in CRM right now, but if you needed an async function that would put data in CRM, you could just host it in Creator and then reference it or call it from anywhere else. So really, really nice there. Again, kind of a nerdy update. A lot of these are focused more on development, but within Creator, having more development tools is always going to be a huge, huge benefit. Alrighty, next story here comes from the world of Zoho Contracts. I haven't talked about this app as much as I expected since they originally released it last year. What they're doing here is they have added an organization parameter for API calls. Again, if you are used to doing development in something like Zoho Books, and I believe Zoho Desk, this is required. CRM, they actually don't. Interestingly, you don't normally need to pass an org ID with a CRM action when you're doing like a Deluge function. But for Desk and Books, you do. Essentially, all this is saying, more of a PSA, honestly, is that if you are writing functions inside of Zoho Contracts, you should assume that you're going to need to pass some type of identifier for an organization, mostly just because they're going to support multi-organization in contracts. So now you need to tell it, well, which one do I want to take this action in?
Yeah, so it's like you said, some apps require an organization ID, others don't. Because like in the CRM, even though your organization has an organization ID, your Zoho login, right, your Zoho email, you can only like own one CRM instance with your login, right? As opposed to Books, I can be in Books logged in as Greg, and I can have like 4 organizations. But if I log in as Greg, I can only go to one CRM. And so any connection that you make in the background, any connection I make where I authorize the CRM using my credentials, there's only one organization I could be a part of.
It's like implied. Like it doesn't need to ask because it knows who you are. It knows what org you're a part of. So there's no need to mandate it.
Yeah. And similarly, actually in Books, if you are only part of one organization, you actually can get away without passing in an org ID in your API calls.
If you're only part of it. I didn't know that.
It's safer. It's
going to work if you pass it. It's not hard. Yeah.
But if you're only part of one organization and you just use a connection, then it automatically is like, oh, well, he's only part of one org, so I know which one he's calling to. But if you are part of multiple orgs and you don't include it, you'll get back something saying, hey, which org did you want to get this from? Because you're part of these like 3 organizations. Please
don't make me guess.
Please don't make me guess. But it looks like, looking at the article here for contracts, they're actually doing a little bit of a hybrid of that, where you'll set kind of like a default organization for yourself. And so if you don't pass in an organization parameter, then it will assume, based on your connection, that you're calling your default organization, which that's really great. If you're like, I do 90% of my API calls to this organization, and occasionally I have to call this other one, then this is nice that you won't have to worry about, those org IDs. But yeah, just again, a very nerdy update. A lot of nerdy updates today. I like it. This is a perfect show for me to be a part of.
It is kind of perfect, isn't it? Keeping in line with developer-centric updates, this is a pretty cool one. I mean, this is a feature that non-developers will definitely care about. So what they've done here for Zoho Writer is they have built out some functionality to post documents directly to WordPress.org websites from within Zoho Writer. So kind of big picture, essentially what they're going to allow you to do is install a Zoho Flow plugin, which we'll talk about in a second on the WordPress side. Within that Zoho Flow plugin, you can then authenticate, it looks like Zoho Writer, connect the two, and then it looks like basically you can take any of your documents from WordPress and essentially post them over into a page on the WordPress side. We were talking a little bit before the show. It's interesting they use like a Zoho Flow plugin. It seems like they're using Flow for a lot of just back-end authentication, right? They're like, why would we rebuild a tool to authenticate Zoho Writer when we already have one, right? So let's just use that to create this piece of middleware. Interesting though, like with some of the work you've done with Brett on some of his like personal projects, posting data over to WordPress, you'd almost think like, is this something that could make that a little easier?
Absolutely. Yeah, because then you're and also the big thing here is on the personal projects, like you mentioned, what we had to do is we had to purchase extensions for essentially being able to make authenticated API calls to use like OAuth 2 to WordPress. And so if the Flow plugin can basically do that for you, then that's going to save a bunch of money and headache. And now don't even have to do Deluge. I could just use Zoho Flow to access the elements from CRM that I want to pass into WordPress. Although it is going to be interesting to look at if the plugin offers the ability to update like advanced custom fields, which is a very popular plugin. And that's what Brett, for example, is using on his website. So we may still have to do Deluge, updates and things like that. But if I can write that Deluge using a, connection in Zoho Flow, then again, I can save, I want to say that the OAuth 2 connector plugin that we're using is like, I want to say it was like $300, which it is for a lifetime thing. So not that big of a deal, but still every little thing.
Yeah, one less link in the process, right? That isn't within the Zoho universe.
Yeah. And I love that they explicitly call out another plugin at the bottom of that article there. So it says like, hey, if you're using Jetpack, you don't have to use Jetpack.
I'm sure the Jetpack development team just loves that call out.
Yeah. Because I clicked on it, and apparently that used to be like their go-to suggestion was, download the Jetpack plugin. Like if you click on it, there's another Zoho knowledge base article saying how to use the Jetpack plugin for this, and they're like, "Hey, we don't have to do that no more. You can sideswipe that. It doesn't matter."
Love the in character there for the Zoho development team.
Yeah, that's the
and I guess
the back alley team.
Yeah, not back end, but back alley.
In a trench coat, like, hey, you want to buy a plugin? I got some good plugins here for you.
I'm gonna hear that voice you're doing right now in my next round of nightmares. So thank you for that. Alrighty, and before I have to hear any more of that voice, let us jump into our last news story of the week. Kind of a quick news week. You can always tell it's a quick news week if we include a Backstage story, because generally these just go into the newsletter. Quick round of updates for Backstage from December 2023. This is just one of their monthly recaps. I will say this is a nice one. They've been building out a lot of HIPAA compliance for Backstage. So if you're hosting any type of event that is going to involve anything in the medical space, right? You probably just want to be HIPAA compliant anyways. So now they're just building out more and more functionality there. This is actually one, like I helped one of our clients do a Backstage implementation like last month. This is really important that they added, which is to selectively capture attendee information for specific types of tickets. Basically, the way it used to work is that you'd have one attendee info form for all tickets, but like if you have a regular and a VIP, you might want to ask different questions on a VIP form. Like maybe VIPs get a meal and you need a meal selection from them, but normal attendees don't, right? Well, you don't want to show a normal attendee a field to pick their meal and they get there and you're like, you don't get a meal. It's like, well, what are you talking about? So just giving more customization is really important on that. Little bit of additional protection for duplicate attendees and just limiting that. More segmentation on email lists. This is one where most of the time you're going to be doing this emailing in another tool, but maybe if you're only in Backstage, right, you'll now have a bit more functionality for segmentation. And then just some ongoing improvements for SEO on the microsite. So within Backstage, when I publish an event, it essentially creates a landing page that you can design that will route them through the ability to purchase tickets. So they've just done some continuous improvement on the SEO and optimization there. Just to make sure people can find it. If they search for events like yours, ideally, they would land on your microsite. So nice round of updates. Again, really that second one's the biggest, the selectively collecting info based on a ticket type. That's one that I could have used about a month and a half ago if it was there. I had to get creative, do a different solve. But yeah, that would have worked
yesterday.
Awesome.
I'm curious about one thing. I'm starting to pull at the thread of this sweater. So HIPAA compliance for Zoho Backstage. So when I think of Zoho Backstage, I think of them making it's usually like conferences or like big events. I guess where would you have a bunch of like patients? Because that's really where because like if you were just having like a doctor's conference, like I don't really feel like there's not the same level of concern for like, oh, I have a bunch of doctors and I can't let anybody know like the doctor's personal information. Like that's usually not but maybe there are rules about that for like medical conferences or something.
Yeah, and it could be like access to like data handouts and slides, right? So for example, like if you're going to show some type of like, and it is a thing, we don't work in the medical space, so we always defer to our clients for what's exactly allowed when it comes to HIPAA compliance. But like maybe you have like a data set that you're going to share as part of a presentation and you want to make sure that it can't be downloaded or things like that. You might be able to get there without like going through a HIPAA menu. But yeah, I mean, hypothetically, you wouldn't be asking, well, I guess you could, but generally you wouldn't be asking for medical information for like the event attendees. Unless I guess it was like, maybe you're running a conference, you are a pharmaceutical manufacturer running a conference and you've invited people that have a disease to it. Maybe that's maybe that's what that sweater looks like.
Maybe if you were, maybe somebody's using Zoho Backstage to run a blood drive or something. I don't know.
That's actually that's a great example. Like blood type, that would be covered under HIPAA, right? Yeah. Let's go with that. I think that's probably the use case is a blood drive.
Sounds good to me.
Alrighty. So as you mentioned, kind of a quick news week. We still somehow managed to eat up 30 minutes on it. So with that, let us jump right into our implementation of the week. All right, here I am again. So this week, we are walking through an implementation to integrate BigCommerce with Zoho CRM using Zoho Flow. So this was built out by Tom and Andrew on the Zenatta team for one of our clients. Essentially, the goal here was to integrate BigCommerce so that orders would flow in to the CRM to create sales orders and invoices. First thing we did is set up the connections inside of Zoho Flow to allow us to make actions or request data and send data to and from BigCommerce and Zoho CRM. Then Zoho Flow has a robust set of triggers available for BigCommerce. So anytime an order is placed, we can trigger a Zoho Flow that will capture that full data set. In this case, we actually just send a lot of this data straight into a Deluge function. Honestly, this is how most of my flows go when I build them. I just take the payload, I put it in a Deluge function, and I do the entire rest of the activity there. Now, the interesting thing with this function in particular is that they have billing and shipping customers, and they can oftentimes be different, like completely different companies. Like, I buy this on behalf of Greg, and it's going to deliver to Greg, and he's the customer, but I'm the billing customer. So we had to make sure that the data was being parsed to basically separate those out, like shipping customer, billing customer data, checking the CRM to make sure that those are already in the system as accounts and contacts with all of that relevant data, and then creating the order connected to those proper entities. So it's kind of a 2 stakeholders on an order rather than one. Normally on like an e-commerce integration, it's like, I just buy it, I'm the customer, that's it. In this case, there is this like 2 customer setup that we had to handle. Yeah, big shout out to the team. They were able to sort out like the parsing of all of that customer data, create it in CRM if it doesn't already exist, or update it if it already did, just to make sure that we have the most up-to-date data. The one thing I will say that was nice is many, many moons ago, probably 2020, I did a BigCommerce integration using Zoho Flow. And back in the day, what would be sent into Zoho Flow by BigCommerce was essentially a list of URLs. So instead of sending you like the line items, they would send you a URL you could use to make another API call to get the line items, which I never understood, because wouldn't that be more expensive for them to respond to 2 calls rather than just send the data? It looks like they don't do it that way anymore. I kind of warned Tom when I was teeing off this deal for him, like, hey, you might have to do some weird stuff to get this data. But no, they actually just send the full payload now, which is like obviously what you should do. So it went just a little bit smoother throughout the course of this integration. Yeah, big shout out to Tom and Andrew. This is a nice build for our client.
Awesome. Well, then let's hop over to our code share. What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right, and this week's code share comes from one of our senior developers, Alex. This is a great share about how to send a Zoho CRM email template with an attached mail merge template. And
super useful.
Looking at this code snippet, you would, if you had to code anything like this, like 6 or 8 months ago, this would be like about 500 lines of code, because back, just in, we're already on V6 of CRM's API, but back in pre-V5, if you had to do a mail merge document via API, you had to actually pull and compile all of the mail merge data yourself and format it in a way, like you would have to get the mail merge template and then get all of the metadata from the template of all the different merge field names, and then match those to a JSON map of your actual data. And then pass all of that in. And that was always a pain, especially as newer features were being rolled out in mail merges with related lists and auto repeating tables. It got
you could do so much formatting and logic in the template when you build it, but then when you would automate it, you would have to almost reconstruct a lot of that in the code itself to actually get it to fill in. And the part, not to interrupt you, but the part Greg's talking about here is just being able to pass in this template, right? That's the big difference maker, right? Is you're invoking a template rather than referencing a template and then recreating the template on the fly to satisfy the document.
Yeah, with V5, with CRM's V5 API, they finally made it so that if I have a template ID and I have a CRM record ID, let me just hand you those. It does all the mail merging. Yeah, because that's already how it works when you go in to use a mail merge template manually.
When you do it manually.
You click a button and it says, oh, yeah, sure, you want this record. Yeah, I get it. I totally understand what you're saying. They finally got that. And so this shows you how to use that download a PDF copy of that merged document, and then using another API call to use just a separate CRM email template that is also, a merged document in a way, but not a writer merged document, just an email template. And again, feed a record ID into that and send it off. And it is beautiful and so much easier than it used to be. So thank you, Alex, for putting this to digital paper, putting digital pens to digital paper.
It's one of those things where one of the things Zoho does really well as part of a CRM process is generate documents. And the minute they opened up that template ID option to just do it that way, so much better. It's like back in, was it V2.1 that they rolled out sending emails via template ID? I remember that was like a huge benefit because you just make a template, send it. If the customer needs to update that email later, great, no big deal. Just update it. Script doesn't need to be touched. That's another big thing just to highlight before we jump off the code share is that doing it this way, the way that Alex is demoing, means that a non-coding user can go in, make an adjustment to that template. Let's say add a new field, right? We now want to include the phone number, right? Whatever, when they sign it. You don't need to then go into the function, pull the phone number, map the phone number, and make sure that it comes through. It's just going to happen. So yeah, adds a lot of autonomy when you do it this way for people who aren't comfortable with Deluge, which is always what you want, right? You shouldn't have to pay a developer to add a field to a document, right? It just not ideal.
Yep.
Alrighty. So I think with that, we can jump over to what's new on Zenatta.com. And for a second there, I thought I got that backwards. I thought it was supposed to be the tip of the week, and my heart dropped. But then I saw that transition, and I knew I got it right. So this article here for this week is kind of covering what type of cost savings are available when people switch over to Zoho One. I think a lot of our viewers are probably well aware that we are big fans of Zoho One. It can save people a ton of money as you start to move over other software tools. Obviously, CRM is the big one. Moving from HubSpot or Salesforce will save you a lot of money. Same with Zoho Books. Zoho Desk is a big one. I always forget sometimes how expensive tools like Zendesk are. Like it's meaningfully more expensive than Zoho Desk on a per user basis, especially when you start bundling it in with other tools. Really big one too. Like, I mean, obviously Click and email and things like that. Electronic signature. Those tools are expensive. If you have a big sales team and you're running things through DocuSign, especially if you're automating it and you're paying the per envelope charge, which is like $1.50 versus Zoho's like 50 cents. Meaningful cost savings as you start to consider moving over. Last one too, I know we were kind of having a laugh at their expense with the HIPAA thing on Backstage, but we always like to highlight this when we talk about Backstage. They don't charge a commission, right? When you run an event on Eventbrite and you're charging for it, they take a fee, right? It's like a rev share model that Eventbrite has. Backstage is just licensing. So if you're selling tickets for events, it's well worth considering it because especially if you have a lot of attendees, like if events are a big revenue driver for you, shaving off the Eventbrite like percent fee is pretty meaningful at the end of the day. So well worth considering.
I will say one caveat with that, because this is something that I experienced as I run a performance group down here in Utah. And I wanted to look into Backstage about like, could that help with our like essentially our ticketing system? Because like you said, Zoho doesn't take they don't take part of your ticket fee and everything like that. And the difference is that with Backstage, if you want to run like ticketing and things like that, you have to use an event like token, as it were. Like you pay per event. So I will say that if you are if you do a lot of small events, Zoho Backstage is not really for you.
Good point. Yeah, good point.
Like we're doing shows, twice a month with like 40 attendants each time. Zoho Backstage is more built for you're doing a conference, twice a year, something like that, and you have 100 to 1,000 attendees.
Yeah. You
Is
basically have
where
to
Go
calculate,
Backstage is
like,
a lot more cost effective.
yeah, it's like we expect to sell 1,000 tickets for this event. So we compare the percent rev share on Eventbrite with the fixed fee of Backstage per the event, the break even point based on the ticket price, number of attendees, etc. Yeah, that's a good call out, right? So if you're doing a lot of small ones, maybe not. The only other challenge that I've kind of seen with Backstage is that, like, everyone already has, or not everyone, but a lot of people already have Eventbrite downloaded on their phone for like
Yeah.
that ticket. Right. So there is that like curve of like getting people to download a new app. Generally not the biggest deal. If they want to go to the event, they'll probably download it right at the end of the day. But there is something to be said for just having a massive base of entrenched installs in that application.
Yep.
Well, sweet. With that, let's jump over to our tip of the week. All right, there he is, the man, the myth, the legend, Greg Belnap, bringing us a tip this week on 3 essential tips for improving error handling in Zoho Deluge. What should people expect going into this video, Greg?
Tears, laughter, just really being moved. Yeah, we're going for a Golden Globe next year. So I'll summarize the 3 main tips for you. Obviously, I go into more depth in the video, but essentially it's using standalone functions to better compartmentalize your function flows, using a combination of if-else statements and try catches for grabbing both anticipated and unanticipated errors. And then finally, I think the most important one, which is compiling those info statements and error statements in a meaningful way, and then creating a repository or database where you can essentially create your own log history for any given function.
Got it.
Because the nice thing about like something that's really good in like Flow, for example, is that or books is that you have log histories of every execution of those functions. Whereas in the CRM, you only get log histories for function failures.
Yeah, but then it's like define failure, because not every failure counts as a failure, right? Is what I've come to find within writing Deluge, is like something won't occur as expected, and you'll look and there's nothing in the failure log.
Yeah, because if you're, let's say that like I have a function where the last thing it's supposed to do is it makes an API call to Zoho Books to create an invoice or something. It could be that that something went wrong and the invoice wasn't created. But if all I had was if all I did was info, my invoice creation API call, and I didn't have any kind of conditions afterwards, the function executes successfully because I successfully received a response from Zoho Books saying that something went wrong.
Telling you we didn't make an invoice. Yep.
Right.
But
so the CRM says so the CRM says, "Oh, we nailed this. We got this." But and so as a result, you end up not seeing that anything actually went wrong. And you have and then that all that context is lost. So I kind of show here how you can use something like, you could use a custom module in the CRM or an analytics table or a Zoho sheet even to just sort of keep a running log of all the times your function is run. And then you can, if you do it, I like using analytics because if you use analytics, then you can also have like really nice looking reports built so that you can just see like a ratio of successes to failures. Set up email alerts.
Alerts. Alex had set me up a while ago. One of our senior developers set me up a system of alerts before, where like when an error comes, like it will only email you a list of errors if there is an error on it every day, right? So you don't just receive an empty spreadsheet every day, right? So that's super useful. I actually had a client a long time ago. They had a couple like extremely mission critical processes that were all automated, but it would cost them a lot if they ever failed. They actually built a standard for their Zoho install where at the beginning of every function, it would write a row to analytics to say that this function started, and it would assign itself a function run ID. And then at the end of the function, it would check all the responses. And if it was successful, it would like check off that row was successfully completed. That's probably the most robust that I've seen, that it actually would count it at the beginning and at the end.
Yes.
So just another strategy we can add. Very rare that you need that. Like what you're doing here is essentially that, just with less steps. But I always thought that was interesting. Let me see if I can get this screenshot of Greg giving.
Yeah, what a great freeze frame there.
Oh, I always try to get you with these when I'm screen sharing.
All
right, as always,
so well.
We do want to remind everybody over on youtube.com/Zenatta is where all of our videos are. We post a lot of them, basically 3 to 4 to maybe 5 a week. This is where all the webinars go, all the tip videos, all the podcasts, the episodes of Azaz. So make sure to jump over there and check us out because you will find many more videos that will help you along the way as you are building out your Zoho install. So I think with that, that's everything for this week. Thanks again for joining, Greg. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. Awesome.
And in fact, I think I might be here next week too.
I think so. I think that's the plan. So maybe
you can't get rid of me that easily.
It's like a virus.
Oh yeah. Oh, you'll see me again. Don't you worry about that. Don't you worry. I'll be back next week.
Freddie, run the end card, please. Alrighty, and as always, if you want to get in touch with myself, Brett, anyone on the Zenatta team, just head over to zenatta.com and click on that big old green book a meeting button. We'd be happy to talk to you.
And don't forget to check out the ultimate Zoho resource library at zenatta.com/resources, where you can find all of the CRM Zen show notes, as well as all of the articles that we've mentioned here. And if you want all that delivered right to your inbox every Monday, stay up to date, go to zenatta.com/newsletter and sign up.
Ready, and as always, we always appreciate when you like and subscribe here on YouTube, as well as your choice of podcast app. With that, we will see you next Friday, likely with Greg again, bringing his special brand of unhinged charisma. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.